What do you think about the term toxic masculinity?
I think it's a toxic term. It escaped from the margins of academia in 2016, not coincidentally, and just became a term that was used to apply essentially to any behavior by boys and men that the user disapproved of. It's rarely defined without any specificity at all, and so it in a sense is a completely vacuous term. But it's worse than that because by putting those two words right next to each other, it actually repels a lot of boys and men from a conversation about what it means to be a man, what it means to be particularly mature. I think to talk about mature masculinity and immature masculinity is quite useful, but the idea of toxic, it's like Puritan. It's like it reminds me of the idea of original sin in Christian theology, is right. And you need these exorcisms. You need someone to come and exorcise it. If you just weren't so male, you'd be okay. And having raised 3 boys to adulthood, I got to tell you, that idea that there's something toxic in them that has to be expunged is not a helpful way to raise them. So if we could just consign that particular term back to the obscurity of academic journals, that would be great.
All right, stopping in there, and welcome to Mika Reaction Reviews, where we react and review to things on the internet. And before we get into my commentary, if you're watching this video, that means I am back on YouTube, coming back from a 2-week break because your girl got a second strike on this channel for literally reacting to a political campaign, which will be uploaded into my Rumble account. But for the next couple of months, I will be keeping the topics light because I'm on thin ice, but still appropriate for this channel. And in today's video, we're reacting to 2 intelligent men talk about the term toxic masculinity. Now, I like how they sort of brought it back to immature and mature masculinity, because I do think that is a conversation to be had. And even with the idea of toxic masculinity, I don't necessarily have a problem with that term because I think there's a such thing as toxic femininity. I just think the term, like always, was used to sort of overcorrect, and now is used so broadly to demonize all in every kinds of masculinity and masculinity as a whole. I totally agree with him when he said it's sort of this sort of exorcism of masculinity. Like if you weren't so male, you will be a better person and the world will be a better place. I've talked about this on this channel before, where if you were born a little girl, you're told from the time you can walk, if you were raised, I guess, in a loving household, that you are princess, that you can be anything you want to be, that you can do anything the boys can do. Girl power, boss bitch, feminism, intersectionality, all these things. But if it comes to if you were a young boy, it's told from the moment you are a little kid and you're going to school to shut up, sit down, be quiet, you're too much, you're too energetic, you're bouncing off the walls. They medicate you with ADHD medication. They overdiagnose, they wrongfully diagnose little boys to sort of neutralize them and make them more agreeable like little girls in schools, right? You're told that there's something inherently wrong with your biology, with your sex, and if you were just more like a woman, if you're just more like a female, then you will be a better person. And I think that is highly destructive and damaging to little boys, and I think it's confusing to a lot of young men that are probably going against their natural biological urges because they have been told what they're feeling is just inherently wrong. However, I do think there is still a conversation to be had about, like he said, immature, mature masculinity. A lot of young boys, unfortunately, are not being raised by fathers. They're being raised by mothers, or they're being raised by absentee fathers who may be physically there but not really present, and they're finding how to be a man in all the wrong places. It's the same thing when women don't, or young girls grow up without a father, then they don't have an example of what a good man is, and then they go find love in all the wrong places, having daddy issues and stuff like that. It's the same thing with young guys. You know, they figure out how to be a man from their friends who are just as immature as them, or from movies or video games, or toxic sides of the red pill community that, you know, teach them the measurement of being a man is how many girls you can fuck, you know, how many possessions you can possess, and how much money you can gain, so you can get peacock for opportunist gold digging women who aren't gonna love you for who you are anyway and only want you for the things that they can get from you. So I think that is still a conversation to be had, because there is a difference between mature and immature masculinity, but there's nothing inherently wrong with masculinity itself. But anyway, we're gonna get back into the video. Let's go.
Where did it come from?
It was originally from work that was being done with very violent incarcerated prisoners. And so there were a couple of academics that were using it to talk about ways in which, you know, very violent men who were sort of serving long prison sentences, how their views of masculinity had become intertwined with ideas of expressed violence and dominance and so on too. And so it was a concept that was being used by a few psychologists, but I think it was mentioned 5 times a year in academic journals until 2016, and then overnight it was on the front page of every newspaper. And so it escaped. So, you know, I think it did have some value in the sense that there may be a very small group of men for whom actually their sense of what it means to be male has in some ways become toxic. But it was always this tiny minority of men for whom it was ever useful to apply it. And then suddenly Donald Trump got elected, Me Too, etc. And, you know, there you go.
I've heard you say that it's a catch-all term to use when one finds the behavior of any man offensive or unpleasant. And that's so correct. It's gone from being something that's an aberration, a complete outlier, to anything which is just slightly objectionable.
Yeah, that's the problem with it, is that there are many problems with it, but like any of these terms, if it just expands and expands and expands, so everything, you know, I think I just did a quick search around and discovered that everything from climate change to COVID to war to is the result of toxic masculinity. And, you know, if there was resistance to getting vaccinated, it was toxic masculinity. If you make a pass, it's toxic masculinity. And it was just like being, and actually there was this I talk about this in my book, there was an incident at my kids' high school that got international attention as an expression of toxic masculinity, which really woke me up to the way this term is being sort of thrown around and used indiscriminately.
Stopping it there. Yes, like everything is toxic masculinity, just like everything is the patriarchy or everything is racism. And the reason why they use these really broad terms is because, like, it's an easy way to seem like you are a virtuous person pointing out the issues without really doing anything. Because when something is so broad, like when you say something like there's systematic racism, it's so broad that you can just say it and be like, well, it's not a particular thing, so it's nothing I can really do, but just only bring attention to it. Instead of saying, maybe the reason why someone is failing in school because their home life isn't good because, you know, there is an uptick in fatherless homes and there's no stability. It's like, instead of narrowing it down to a particular problem so you can then fix it, because that actually takes work. That's hard work, that takes time, that takes real policies, that takes real change. But when you have like these broad things like, well, global warming is caused by toxic masculinity and the patriarchy and racism, or all cis white men, the problem is so broad. It's such a generalization that, again, it creates an enemy, it points to a problem, making it such a generalized thing. You don't actually have to fix the problem. You don't actually have to do anything about it. But again, it's just creating an enemy, which they're really good at doing, creating an enemy to distract you from the real issues, to distract you from the real problem, and to just divide the society and divide the country.
But as I say, it's not just vacuous, it's actively harmful. And interesting, a lot of feminists will say that now too. There's a lot of people like Helen Lewis, who writes The Atlantic and so on. They're just saying, look, this term is not helping us. It's actually pushing men away from a conversation about masculinity, and can we please stop using it? And so this is not a right-wing view at all. It's actually one that a lot of feminists are just looking at the data and saying, if the goal here is to have a good conversation with boys and men about what it means to be boys and men, this is not the way in. It's a terrible frame for that conversation.
I personally think that any community or any groups of people that their simple talking point and objective is to only point fingers and go, that's the enemy, that's the people that we have to get, that is the issue, and not really trying to have a conversation, not really trying to bring other people in, not really trying to have an understanding. There's not really a community that you should be a part of, because all you're gonna do is become like this angry, radicalized, tribalist person where the issues never get fixed. And I've always said this, is the feminist and the toxic side of the red pill community, they do the same thing, they just make enemies out of each other. The women are the problem. Modern day women are the problem. And when feminists is the men are dogs, men are trash, right? It's two groups of people that sit there and constantly just point fingers at each other, make enemies out of each other, which is not going to bring the sexes together. That's not going to create healthy dialogue and relationships between men and women trying to have romantic heterosexual relationships, right? It's just going to make people resent each other, hate each other, not be able to work together, and once again creating divide, making it wider and wider, bigger and bigger, creating more single mother households, creating more instability into society, and just getting worse and worse and worse over time. If you're not a part of the conversation to try to bring us together, then you're just going to be a part of the problem. I know it feels good when you're in a group of people and you can all just rag on the group of people that you think is destroying society, but that at the end of the day isn't going to fix the problem. But anyway, guys, tell me what you think of this video, and what do you think of the term toxic masculinity? Do you think it still should be a term that can be used, especially if you believe there's also such thing as toxic femininity? Or do you rather stick to the term of immature femininity or masculinity? Or do you think we should just get rid of all of it altogether? Do you think it's just destructive? Let me know in the comment section below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell to get the notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And if you'd like to support this channel any further, you can donate. My PayPal link is in the description box below and also in the comment section. Of course, it helps, but you don't have to. You can just like, comment, and subscribe. Another great way to support this channel is either join my brand new membership program, different levels, different tiers, different perks, or if you can visit my brand new merch shop, links down below, and links to all of my alternative platforms, my Rumble, my Discord, my Odyssey, my Twitter, and all the other links to all the other YouTube channels I have is always in the links down below. And I implore you to please go follow me on all those other channels and avenues, because if my channel does just bloop off the platform, then we have ways to still communicate with one another. And if you like, you can super thanks. I also have a second travel vlog channel. I travel as a lifestyle, or I live abroad. If you'd like to know where I am in the world, you can go to the description box below and also in the comment section. Hit the link, go subscribe to my travel vlog channel, and or follow me on my travel Instagram. My stories is usually what's most up to date, and you guys have an amazing day. Bye.